Good morning, members, and welcome to this meeting of Annandale and Eskdale Area Committee on Wednesday, the 29th of September. This meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be made available on our Council's website for public listening. Could I remind members to follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off the video when you're not addressing the meeting. Should you wish to contribute to any item, you should write "Speak" in the Teams chat function, and you'll be invited to speak in order about new issues. Should your question or issue be raised by a previous speaker, please withdraw your request so we can deal with the business as efficiently as possible. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting for any reason, can I remind you to either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time, or you could write "Leave" in the Teams chat function and then join. This will allow us to monitor member presence. Tracy, could you please provide the sediment indicating who's participating remotely, and any apologies, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. We've got 5 members present. We've got 4 members on Microsoft Teams and 1 member present in Annandale Town Hall, being the chairman. And I've got apologies from Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Tracy. I confirm my agreement to the participation of those members named as participating remotely. Item number 2 is declarations of interest. Do any members have a declaration of interest they wish to make?
Can I declare an interest, Chair, but on item number 6, I volunteer at New Start Recycle, but I don't get any, and I believe my interest is such I can still be involved in that report.
Okay. Thanks, Archie. Item 3 then is the minute.
Chair, can I just say ditto as Archie? I do the same.
All right, thanks, Sean. Yeah, so we'll get that noted as well, Tracy. Okay, thank you, members. On to then the minute of the previous meeting of 25th of June 2021. This is for noting. Members, are we happy to note this?
Noted.
Thank you. So that takes us on to item 4, which is the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service Annandale and Eskdale Area Annual Performance Report for 1st of April 2020 to the 31st of March 2021. The report outlines the performance of the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service for the last year, from April 20 to March 21, and whilst the period covered by this report has been turbulent as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, overall it's broadly positive. It was pleasing to read that the number of accidental dwelling fires and road traffic collisions have reduced, and that Annandale and Eskdale continues to be one of the highest performing areas in Dumfries and Galloway and throughout Scotland for appliance availability. We have Station Commander Lucy Donaldson with us, but before I open up to members, I wondered whether, Lucy, if you could elaborate a touch on how the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service has adapted in the last 18 months or so, or whether you have anything further to add to your report. Over to you, Lucy.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak this morning. I'm new in the role. I don't think many of you will know me. I've taken over the role in April from Scott Irving. I live locally in the Moffat area, and I've been down in Dumfries and Galloway since the start of my career 26 years ago. As you say, a very pleasing report. Obviously, we have to take into account that all the figures are skewed from last year for obvious reasons. Figures that are coming out in the last quarter, for the first quarter for this year, are returning to something of normal. Over the last 18 months, Scottish Fire and Rescue Service has adapted as well as it could to the pandemic, the restrictions that were put on movement, maintaining resilience in the area with the retained personnel availability, protecting the community and our personnel from cross-contamination of COVID infection. For this fact, we limited the number of possible contamination routes, so we split drill nights. At one point, we even came down to just 2 drill members, 2 crew members going in at a time, and we looked at the way that we responded to incidents. So that was taking into account the type of incident they were turning out to, the number of personnel attending, ensuring that the station stayed in their bubbles. The community action team continued with their community fire safety. They had to adapt, as we all did, and go virtual, but still managed to get the safety messages out to the young people in the schools over the predominant times of bonfire, school holidays, taking on such things as deliberate fire setting, water safety, working with police and youth work over the summer, and they still managed to deliver their operation safety in both the east and the west, although had to be a virtual lesson. They're starting to get back out now, but still we're very restricted on the kind of contact that we can have, hence the reason we're all sitting virtual today. Fire safety enforcement, they continued throughout on a reduced rate, but audits were still carried out, either over the phone or outside the building. This was particularly in regard to care homes and residential homes due to the lockdown restrictions. However, they're now starting to get back out and about and do that as well. I've got all the statistics that you could wish to go over if you want. Again, statistics, when it comes to Annandale and Eskdale, the figures are really low. So you're better looking at actual real numbers than looking at percentages, because a one incident increase can really skew figures. So I would advise any time that you're looking at that, it's always better to look at the actual figures. But happy to answer any questions that I can, or get back to you with anything else you'd like to know.
Thank you, Lucy. And obviously you've got no shortage of challenges, but it's very interesting to hear just how you've had to adapt, just with staff and pressures and the different work practices you've had to come to terms with in order to maintain the service. And obviously we're I think in Annandale and Eskdale, we're fortunate in that we're in a position where small changes in numbers can affect the percentages to such a great extent, but that's in a sense a reflection of how safe we are in a number of ways. So I'll open it up to members' comments or questions. So I'm just looking for interventions in the chat. Archie Dryborough.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. Thanks, Lucy, for the presentation. And I noticed that there has been a slight change, which is good. The good change is that you've also got the previous 5 years as well on the top right-hand corner, which I think it was Councillor Brodie that actually asked for that a few meetings ago. Again, yeah, I would agree it's a very positive report, considering the time that we've actually had over the last 18 months. I would like to ask maybe one pertinent question with regard, the role and responsibilities of the Fire and Rescue Service regarding, people will come up into Scotland and buy bits of land, and those bits of land may be next to buildings. And some of those buildings that are on the bit of land that's bought may be unsafe and could be wooden structures and actually a fire hazard. And that fire hazard could actually spread if it's met to the neighbouring properties. If there is an issue such as that, what is it that we can do as local members to advise you of that, first of all? And is there anything that the Fire and Rescue Service can do to support the local community when they have concerns of that sort of nature?
Yeah, we have the fire safety enforcement officers who are the ones who are practiced with the whole legislation. It's not an area that is my remit as such. It's not something that I've been involved with. I'm more operational, but absolutely, I can always furnish you with the names and contacts of the fire safety enforcement officers. If you would have anything in particular that you would like to ask them, you can ask them directly and get advice that way.
Fine, thank you.
Any further comments or questions from members? I noticed that, yes, it did have the 3 and the 5 year sort of symbols in the top of the report, which is very welcome. I think our challenge is maybe ensuring that that's the same for the police as well. But no, that's very welcome. So thanks for adding that into the report. Any other members wanting to add any comments before we go to the recommendations? I'm not seeing anything coming up in the chat. So with that, thanks very much for that one, Lucy. I think we can say that we've scrutinised the performance report and as detailed in appendices 1 and 2. Thank you very much. That takes us on to item number 5, which is the Scottish Fire and Rescue Services quarterly performance update from 1st of April 2021 to the 30th of June 2021. So obviously this follows on in some sense from the last report. Lucy, do you have anything to add to the report for this one before we open up to members again?
Nothing more than you'll see that statistics are starting to look a little bit more normal. So they do look as if they're high compared with last year, but that they can't be taken into context in their own right. But happy to answer questions.
Thank you. I have Sean Marshall with a question.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Hi, Lucy. Thanks for the previous report as well. I thought it was very comprehensive and very encouraging news. Just with regards to this year, I noticed, and there's something later on in the agenda, there's an application in, and it's surrounding the change in Scottish Government legislation on smoke alarms. And I'm just wondering, you know, what the fire service, is there anything proactively they're doing to try and inform people about the change in, I knew it was meant to be February 2021, but it's now February 2022, I think, due to the COVID pandemic. I'm just wondering what proactively we'll do to kind of roll that message out to ensure that, you know, especially the vulnerable actually manage to change their smoke alarms.
Yeah, it's a very difficult one because everybody obviously thinks that the fire service has driven this and that the fire service is responsible for this. And obviously there is a cost to it, and I have come across that myself with some distressed, particularly elderly, wondering how they're going to pay for it. To that end, Scottish Fire and Rescue Service produced a leaflet a good 18 months, 2 years ago, which has now recently been updated, obviously, with the change in dates. That leaflet's being handed out by fire service personnel who attend for home fire safety visits or if they attend a dwelling for any particular incident. The social media, I don't know if you've got Scottish Fire and Rescue Service on your Twitter or your Facebook account, but we've really been trying to hit that message quite strongly over the last 2 or 3 months because we knew it was coming again, and we know that everybody's now starting to look to February. So the message is going across there. There's information directly on the Fire Scotland website, which is full of legislation and information and links back to Scottish Government on whether it's fire safety enforcement or your domestic smoke detectors. We do have a plan in place, and we have rolled out nationally, which Dumfries and Galloway is now trained up in and part of. Scottish Government have issued a budget to supply interlinked for the high risk, or what we class as high risk or vulnerable. And we have already started fitting these detectors in these homes throughout Dumfries and Galloway, and particularly in Annandale and Eskdale to date.
Thanks, Lucy. Sean, does that answer your concern? I'll take silence as being okay for now, but you can come back in later. Archie, do you want to come in?
Yeah, Sean asked one of the questions I was going to ask, so I'm pleased that the answer was there. The second question